But my title of my message today is the final question. And it's on Daniel 1 and 2, but I'm Daniel 12, verses 1 and 2. I put this cough drop in my mouth and my tongue's getting tied up. So anyway, some of the things when I first started preaching this. Some believe Daniel's entirely a book of prophecy. Others believe it has no prophecy and is complete history. And others believe it is both history and prophecy. I'm in the last category. I believe it is history and prophecy. I was a kid when I learned the book of Daniel, and I believe that I was taught that the whole book of Daniel was prophecy. But as I've studied it, I believe it is history and prophecy. I tried to explain it mainly concentrating on the prophecy. Another statement I made regards to prophecy, Daniel, in his visions, dreams, and trances, viewed the future, the return of Christ, which what I believe was what he knew about history and mankind and the things of his days. With all this being said, I'm concentrating on one verse, and it's verse 2, but I will cover a little bit in verse 1, because when I covered it, it threw me for a loop, and that's an honest statement. When I studied it, it literally, that one comment, that one reference that was given for that verse threw me for a loop. Okay? Some of this is a repeat, I know, but I think it's important to remember what was said before. Daniel 1:12, verse 1. Next slide, Tyler. The time of the end. Now at the time of Michael, a great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people will rise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until the time, and at that time your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. Now points back to Daniel 11, verses 36 through 45. If you reference it back, it goes back and it talks about the end time. The king, the Antichrist, will do as he pleases in verse 36. And he will exalt and magnify himself above every god and speak monstrous things against the gods. He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, nor will he show regard for any other god, for he himself will magnify himself above all. That is the Antichrist. But instead, he will honor the God of fortress. The God of fortress is mentioned 5 times in chapter 11, and it means a starting place, and this was the Antichrist's security. It's where the Antichrist set up his throne, where the Antichrist took over, set up his throne, and it was a security. He had power and he exalted himself as God, a God that was exalted above all gods, higher than any other god, and that's the basic reference from that. The other, Michael the Archangel, we've talked about Michael the Archangel several times. One of the things I found in this study that I didn't cover before is the Antichrist. It's believed, and this isn't in what's believed. This part that's believed is not in the Bible, but it's in history. That Michael the Archangel, Michael the Archangel battled Satan to find Moses. Satan to keep Moses. I'll get it right in a minute. To keep the Antichrist from finding Moses. Moses was buried without entering the promised land and was secretly buried. And Michael stands guard to keep the Antichrist from finding Moses. And that's in Deuteronomy 34, verses 5 and 6, where it says that Moses died and was buried, and no man knows his burial place till this day. The Antichrist, it's believed in other history that the Antichrist wanted to set him up, Moses, up as an idol for idol worship, but Michael, showing his power against the Antichrist, saved that from happening, kept that from happening. Matthew 24:15. This is talking about the end times. There will be a great tribulation such as never occurred since the beginning of time and of the world until now. Daniel 12:1, at the very last part, that verse, it says that the book is the book of the rescued. The rescued are the redeemed, the people that have followed Christ. And that's a reference, if you go back in Malachi 33:16 through 43, and I just wrote one verse down. I didn't even write the verse down, I just did it as a reference. The book of remembrance, they will be mine, my own possession. I will spare them, distinguish them between the righteous and the wicked. God separated us. God redeemed us. Revelation 13:8. All who dwell on earth will worship the Antichrist. It says him in little letters. Everyone whose name is not written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain, they will be the ones that will be redeemed. Jesus died to purchase our salvation. Also, Revelation 21:27, that calls it the book of life. That is the book of rescue. If you go back through all the verses and all the things that it ties to. So now, the real question. Okay, this is what tripped me up. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Many, these are the others. There are two groups. There's two groups in this one verse. Everlasting life and everlasting contempt. So it's really easy when you read it fast and you're not studying it, it's really easy to, because I caught myself on a couple of other verses as I was studying this, reading them fast, trying to get them done, and then I had to go back and look at something because I missed it. You understand what I'm saying? If you read it fast, you don't understand it. John 5:28 and 29, an hour is coming in which all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and will come forth. Those who did the good deeds to resurrection of life, glorified bodies. Those who committed evil deeds to the resurrection of judgment, hell. Those are the true believers. They'll have eternal life. Others are the unsaved. The unredeemed will fall to everlasting torment in hell. The question also comes up in this verse or about sleeping in John 28:29. They will receive glorified bodies. Revelation 20, verses 4 through 6. I'm not going to read all of them, but these are the references given for 12:2. Then I saw thrones, and they that sat on the thrones, judgment was given to them. This is later. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of the testimony of Jesus, because of the words, and those who had not worshipped the beast and not received the mark on their forehead and on their hands. And they came to life, reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of them did not come to life until the 1,000 years are completed. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy are the one who has part in the first resurrection, and these of the second death no power, but will be the priest of God, and Christ will reign with him for 1,000 years. Other verses. One that always brings up questions. Well, we have good courage. I say I would prefer rather be absent from the body and to be present at home with the Lord. Absent from the body. Absent from the body with the Lord. Is this soul sleep, or what I believe now, and I'm going to just say it like this, after studying over and over and over, rest or to rejuvenate? I used to believe in soul sleep. Not that I totally understood it, but that's what I was taught, was that we all slept. And we do. But that's not the sleep that we think about. In this verse, 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, and I'm not going to read all of it because all of us are familiar with this verse. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, by those who are asleep. Now, why did I read just that far? If you look up different translations of the Bible, first one being not the original King James, but the old King James version that we're familiar with, that verse said those who are dead. It doesn't use the word asleep. Another version says, and I think it was the Amplified, says those who have died. Okay? And several verses say fallen asleep. And that's where the term soul sleep comes from, is the verses that say fallen asleep. So I'm going to just address fallen asleep just for a minute, or dead, or whatever you want to think of it. I'm going to try to tell you where I'm at and why I changed my thought process. First reference. How many days was Jesus in the tomb? 3 days. He was asleep in the tomb. Okay? Right? Or dead in the tomb. One of the verses that I wrote down, I think I've got it written down later. Here's one right here. For Christ also died for the sins once and for all, so that he might bring to God, having been put to death. That's 1 Peter 3:18. Ephesians 4:9. He accursed. What does this mean except that he also descended into the pits of hell? Okay? That's where we get the Apostle Creed from. where he ascended in the pits of hell. Now, he ascended, not he himself, but his spirit, and I'll read that verse later, his spirit ascended into the pits of hell. Okay? Now, did it last 3 days, 1 day, 2 days? I have no idea.
Ascended?
I just descended. One of the verses I read, I'm sorry, Valette, one of the verses that I have in my notes says he ascended but then descended. Okay? That's and I've got that written here somewhere, I think. But I'm not going to get hung up on that. But it says, and another verse says that his spirit went to the abyss. Okay, so he descended into the abyss, hell. So I personally believe we will resurrect. We will not resurrect, and I want to qualify that. We will resurrect, but we'll be in the grave for whatever time it's going to be. But our spirit will be around until the second coming. Everybody does not believe that, okay? And at the resurrection, when we do resurrection, we'll receive a new heavenly body. Our body will be changed, and we'll receive that new body. The instant we die, we will be out of the restraints of time. But God himself is out of time. We're not going to be under restraints, and that's why we can take the verse, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as 1 day. Because we will be in the grave, some in the grave for thousands of years, some in the grave for a month, some in the grave for, in my dad's case, since 2007. So see, it's all different. God has no restraints of time. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter how long we're in the grave, because God is there. The coming day of the Lord, 2 Peter 3, 1 through 9, and in verses 14 and 15. I didn't underline what I was going to read, but I don't want to read it all. The second letter I'm writing you is which I'm stirring up sincere of mine. This is about the coming of the day of the Lord. That you should remember the words spoken before by the holy prophets and commands of the Lord Savior spoken by the apostles. Know first of the last days mockers will come, and their mocking will follow after their own lust, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? Do we hear that now? Ever since the fathers fell asleep, died, okay, different translation, all continue just as it was from the beginning of creation. For when they maintain this, it escapes their notice that the word of the God, the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of the waters and the earth, through which the world at that time was destroyed. God's still in control. God knows everything that's going on. He knows every word that's spoken. He knows every thought that's thought. And then the last part of that. Therefore, beloved, since you look for these things diligently, to be found in him in peace and spotless and blameless, and regard the patience of the Lord as salvation, just also and beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given to him. And my dad was impatient. My dad was impatient. I'm sorry? I'm not either. Every day, the last 5 years of his life. Son, Jesus is going to come back right now. Jesus is coming back real soon. I said, Daddy, I'm not ready. I want to see my kids raised like you've seen your kids raised. I want to have the opportunity to know that my kids are going to heaven. Okay? Well, son, he's coming back. Well, guess what? He died in 2007. Has he come back yet? See? The lack of patience. My daddy loved the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. 2 points. No. I scribbled that out. But the question here is thought-provoking. This is the end of Daniel, not chapter 12. Is Daniel talking about Old Testament saints who died sitting on the throne, or two Old Testament saints who walked with God and never saw death, who were called up? Okay? That's where it threw me for a loop, because the translation, the references that were given said that the Old Testament saints, and I read that verse that was given over and over and over, never got it. Okay? That the Old Testament saints would precede me to heaven. All the Old Testament saints, all the people that had died before. And that confused me. So I wrote down 2 verses, or 2 passages. What happened to Enoch? He walked with God and was no more, for God took him. That's an Old Testament saint. 2 Kings. And I know you can figure out who this one is after I start reading it. Debbie's already shaking her head, yes. 2 Kings 2, 11 through 12. As they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses, fire which separated the 2 of them, and Elijah. Elijah went up with the whirlwind to heaven. Elijah saw it and cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and a horseman. And they saw Elijah no more. I believe that could be the 2 saints, or the saints. But if you take the other people of the Old Testament, there are many that were special. Lazarus wasn't an Old Testament saint, but let's think about Moses. What did Moses do? What did Abraham do? What about Sarah? What about King David? Why would they resurrect before me? That's my big question. But I could accept, if the other scholar is right, I could accept Elijah and Enoch. 1 Corinthians 5, 12 through 17. Now Christ is preached and has been raised from the dead. How do some among you say that there's no resurrection? And the very last part of that verse says, your faith is in vain. In other words, your faith is worthless if you don't believe in the resurrection. And the funny thing is this was even part of the disciples battling this verse. Luke, truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise. This goes back to the other part that I was doing, and I started to bounce it around, but I decided not to. Who was that? It was the thief on the cross. So, if God told him, or Jesus told him, that this day you will be with me in paradise, is that a spirit? Because he still went to the grave, right? He went to the grave, so is that his spirit? And then another one. Jesus himself. We talked about him being in the grave 3 days. Therefore, when Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Just like the thief on the cross did. And went into heaven. Did his spirit go into heaven, or did his spirit descend to hell, like I said earlier? 2 Timothy, therefore is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. The Lord of righteousness will judge, will award me on the day, and not only me, but all those who have loved his appearing. I've already read John 5:28 and 29. I'm not going to read it again. 1 Timothy says, I'm not ashamed. He is able to guard what he's entrusted until that day. Ecclesiastes 12:5. For a man goes to his eternal home while mourners go to the street. 12:7. Right after the one I just wrote. The one I just read was 12:5. 12 verse 7. Then the dust will return to the earth. We were created by the dirt. Out of the dirt. As it was. And the spirit will return to God who gave it. So that's a real question of today. What happens? Fall asleep, rest, rejuvenate, die. How are you going to look at it? Daniel 12:2 says, we will sleep. 1 Corinthians says, fallen asleep. Isaiah says, your dead will live and the corpse will rise. See all the verses that you can tie to what I'm trying to say. I got pages and pages and pages of them. I had to keep knocking them out to keep this message from being 2 hours long. You're dead and will live. Their corpses will rise. You will lie in the dust and awake. Shout for joy. For your dew is at the dew of the dawn, and the dawn will give birth to the departed spirits. In other words, your spirit has already been departed from your body. And then the last verse. I hope I didn't skip any pages, did I? It feels like I've gotten through awfully quick. We'll sleep. 1 Corinthians, again, falling asleep. I've already said that. Isaiah. Did that? Hold on a minute. No. That verse is here twice again, I guess. I'll skip down. I'm finishing with Thessalonians. That's what happened. I put it back in the wrong place. Thessalonians 4:13 through 18. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so that you will not grieve as the rest who have no hope. For if you believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, God will bring him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that if we are who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with the shout of the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, so that we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. There are many other verses in the Bible about falling asleep. Okay? It's literally sleeping. And it uses the same word in different translation. Those verses represent the people that fall asleep in the natural body, not the spirit body, after you've left this earth.